Okay, welcome to another show of Lou's Boomer Humor. Man, I got a good show for you today, I promise you. It's called Walt Sadistic Disney, and it really speaks to us boomer people because we grew up on Walt Disney. But before I get to that, let's take a look at something here real quick. I'm working the camera myself again. Bach, well, I won't talk about Bach. He has his problems. But anyway, okay, I want you to remember, please, don't forget, if you're on Facebook and you like this, don't forget to hit share. Okay, not literally hit share like there, but hit share so that we can all, have some fun with this. And if you want to subscribe, and believe me, if you want to subscribe, don't worry, I'm not going to bother you or anything. It's just when these come out, you'll be able to get them, and you're not on any other list or anything like that. I don't like that stuff, so I made sure of that. And if you want to contact me, do it through my webpage, www.loumacalusoauthor.com. Give me your suggestions. Because a lot of you got some good ideas of some boomer topics, that we can have some fun with. But anyway, that's basically it. Now, let's get on to what we want to do here. And see, here's the deal. All of us grew up on Walt Disney to some extent, if we had TVs back then. I'm sure we all did. Whether it was TV, The Mouseketeers, or he had a show, I think it was Sunday night, Walt Disney Presents. But anyway, what we really grew up on was his movies. That was his thing. And when we take a look at this, we're going to find out, or you're going to find out for yourself, or you can decide for yourself, if Disney was really sadistic with us and really messed up our minds, or really they were positive. Let's start with this one. This was an all-time classic. I can get this on here and not knock everything down. There we go. Okay, let's see if that framed up right. All right. I can zoom out a little bit here. There we go. Okay. Alice in Wonderland. Okay, one of the first things that I can remember, even though it came out a few years, after I was born. Alice in Wonderland actually hit the theaters on July 25th, 1953. It was based on Lewis Carroll's book. The thing about this is, and a lot of critics have proven this, it's chock full of drug images. Okay, really. And not Grace Slick. Who am I thinking of? Yeah, was it Grace Slick? Yeah, from Jefferson Airplane brought this to light in Go Ask Alice. Okay, but if you don't believe me, go back and look at it. There's that scene there with the caterpillar. With Alice actually eating the magical mushroom. But I got ahead of myself a little bit. Look at this one. Check this out. Okay, the caterpillar. Sure you can see that. I don't know if the lighting is. Here's the caterpillar smoking, okay, an opium pipe, okay. Can't get around that too much, all right. Okay, and the thing about this, psychologists tell us that really when things hit our formative years like this, they actually come into fruition when we're, in our early adulthood, like our early 20s. And I started to think about, whether this really had any effect on me. And actually it's kind of difficult because, well, actually in my early 20s, I was in college at the time. And, well, quite honestly, I was on a lot of medication back then. But anyway, let's move on. And the next one is one I know all of you will remember, whether you remember the Mary Martin movie or you remember Disney's treatment of it, which was first. Okay? Peter Pan. Okay? Peter Pan, yes. Now, here's the deal with Peter Pan. The synopsis of this story is that Peter, okay, was this guy who flew around. And he told kids that if you think wonderful, beautiful thoughts, okay, you could fly, and you could fly to Never Never Land, okay? And him along with, in the 50s, George Reeves, Superman, actually urged a lot of kids to test the theory And a lot of them jumped off their roofs in high places. And actually, the only thing they really discovered was Newton's theory of gravity. I guess it's lucky that the ground was there to break their fall. But a lot of them busted their, I don't know if they busted their necks like our mother said, but they busted their arms and their legs and so forth. But here's the deal that I really thought was interesting, because I didn't know this, okay, until I did some research. And Peter Pan, actually, take a look at this. Peter Pan, again, I don't know if you can read this real well, but it says, Peter Pan was an angel that held kids' hands when on their way to heaven, Neverland. That's why they never grew up. All these kids were dead. Now, that's a great, a great message for a kid about 4 or 5 years old. And furthermore, in the original Peter Pan book, he killed the lost boys when they got too old. Oh, that's cool. Good message. I actually wrote a book about death phobia, which I had, which this was rather cathartic for me anyway. But anyway, just imagine that, huh? Okay, the next one was one that, let me get this out of the way here, was one that was not an animated deal, but actually had a kind of an interesting history to it. Davy Crockett. Probably got to zoom in a little bit on this guy. All right, I'll zoom out a little bit. All right, here's Davy Crockett. Now, Davy Crockett as a movie actually opened on May 25th, 1955. It actually was part of Disney's television show during that season, that 1955 season, and it was like a mini-series. And what they did was, it was so popular, so darn popular, that a lot of the kids wanted to see more, so they made a compilation. They made it into a movie. Now that's kind of cool, except for a couple of things that I want to point out here. First off, this became a craze. A coonskin cap. Okay? I know the kid across at Mike and I wore these all summer. And remember, this came out May 25th, so all summer we wore these, and literally sweat our asses off, because these things are really warm. This is kind of a cheaper version. We had really good ones, okay? And actually the raccoon tail pulled off of mine, and my mom took a safety pin and put it back on, which I'm sure is the same way Davy Crockett would fix his. But anyway, that was the deal with this. But here's the other thing that I thought was interesting, or kind of weird. Parents back then got into this, and they started pushing their kids. And here's a baby picture of a kid from the 50s. Move this back a little bit. Okay. See if I can zoom in on that a little bit better. Okay. Okay, now take a look at this. Here's a typical kid from the 50s. Got on that coonskin cap, okay? Now in the record, or the recording from this was done by a guy named Bill Hayes, he was actually from my hometown, my original hometown, which was Harvey, Illinois. And a lot of you know that because you're from Harvey who watch these things. And this was a #1 hit, okay, at the time. And in the song he says, Davy Crockett, King, let me think of it. Oh yeah, killed him a bar when he was only 3. Okay, when we assume a bar was a bear. So you see the kid there has a dead teddy bear. And look at this, okay? That is, I don't know if I can get any closer. That is a real live shotgun, okay? Real live shotgun, okay? Now here's a kid that probably had a bright future, right? He's probably a congressman or something now. But anyway, let's move on. One of my favorites, though, of all time, was this one. Lady and the Tramp. All right? Boy, what a great story that was, wasn't it? Okay, Lady and the Tramp. Zoom in a little bit there. Okay, I like this one, okay? However, now, if you go to criticism of Lady and the Tramp, you'll see a lot of stuff like, it showed it. And by the way, this came out the same summer as Davy Crockett. It came out June 22nd of 1955. It's actually the story of a mixed breed dog, okay, a mutt named Tramp, and his romancing of this hot looking Cocker Spaniel named Lady. All right. Now, if you look up some of the criticism, some of the major stuff has to deal with sexism. You know how, it shows how women had to be submissive to men and that kind of thing. And there was also a thing about racism. Especially with the Siamese cats, and there was a Russian dog, and there were stereotypes. All right. Now, there was counter arguments and so forth. So I can see both sides of it. But here was my big objection to it. Okay. Was that Lady and the Tramp came out during a time and was for kids. Now, during the 1950s, parents, for the most part, didn't talk to their kids a lot about sex, okay? We had to find out about it, for the most part, from the kid across, down the alley from us, or, myths that we had. And from movies, okay, like this. And I remember one kid, his theory was that babies came from, when couples held hands and the sweat mixed, okay? My problem with this was, I watched this movie over and over when I was a kid, and for the longest time, this is the famous restaurant spaghetti scene. My problem is I watched this, and for the longest time, I thought having kids had something to do with eating spaghetti, which is kind of weird, I guess that's probably one of the reasons why we never had kids. But anyway, I don't want to get into that. Let's move on, and the next one I want to show you is actually the creme de la creme of Walt Disney sadistic child abuse movies that I think it was, anyway. And that was Old Yeller. Now, some of you probably cringed even when you just saw this show, okay? Because you look at it and, wow, this is really cool. All right, let me zoom out a little bit so you can see this a little better. Zoom in, there we go. Anyway, this is Old Yeller, all right? Now, here's the deal. On the surface, again, this is a really great, it's a frontier family. And, the two boys, they fall in love with this dog, kids love dogs, especially it's like I don't know if it's a yellow lab or a golden retriever, but the point is, they fall in love, you fall in love with it while you're watching the movie, and then at the end, take a look there. There's, Tommy Kirk is the guy. You see him with the rifle? He has to shoot the dog! Okay? Now, the picture I've got right below it here, all right, is not Yeller. That was a picture from National Lampoon, the old magazine, and it was a black humor joke about buy this or we're going to shoot this dog type of thing. I put that there because it was more humorous. Actually, when I looked at this one, and I looked it up on Google, they don't show the tears in Tommy Kirk's eyes. I actually saw this and I got flashbacks. I started having PMS, or I don't know what the hell it is. But anyway, I started tearing up. Okay, so I couldn't watch it. All right? Okay, so what have we learned here? Well, I'm not sure. I hope you had a little bit of a insight. I hope I didn't ruin your childhood completely. But here's the deal, growing up, if you think about it, if you had some problems with drugs, you had some problems with sex, you had some problems with death, you got a thing about animals and so forth, you might look back to Uncle Walt and his sadism. Now, to leave this more on a positive note, I want to play something for you. I mentioned the Bill Hayes thing, the Legend of Davy Crockett. This was a #1 hit. Now, when I play this for you, some of you are going to have great memories and flashbacks, and some of you, when you hear it, are going to wonder how it was a #1 hit, and you're going to want to hurl. But here's the deal. I hope this works. I had trouble with this jukebox anyway. But this is Bill Haley, and he talks about killing a bar when he was only 3. Okay, I think I'm going to go over to my bar, and basically I'm going to kill a bottle of gin.
Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. Born on the mountaintop of Tennessee, the greenest states in the land of the free. Raised in the woods so they knew every tree. They killed Timber Bar when he was only 3. Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. He fought single-handed through the Indian War, till the creek was wet and peace wasn't store. And while he was handling his risky chore, he made himself a legend forevermore. Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier.